Welcome to the partnership path in real life. Ever felt the gap between theory and reality? We're here to bridge that. Dive into real stories, real challenges, and real successes from professionals just like you in the partner and channel management world. Each episode is a journey, a lesson from those who've walked the partnership path, faced the challenges, and reaped the rewards. Whether you're a seasoned partner manager or just starting your journey, this is where theory meets practice. Ready to see the real side of partnership? Let's get started.
Well, hey, Matt, welcome to the Partnership Path in Real Life. I'm so glad to have you here today. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. But before we get to that, I even haven't met you yet. So let's start with some introductions. Tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and how long you've been working with partners.
Hey, thanks, John. So my name is Matt O'Donnell. I lead the life sciences ISV partnerships for Microsoft, so specifically in that vertical.
Okay.
I've been with Microsoft 10 years, but I'd say in a formal capacity, have only been working with partners for about a year.
Okay.
I think on and off pretty much the whole 10 years, but maybe the last 3 years a little bit weighted in the direction of partners.
What's your primary background? Like, what prior to working with partners, what was your primary responsibilities in the various jobs you had?
Yeah, okay. Well, so at Microsoft, the entire 10 years I've been here, I've been working with life science customers.
Okay.
I started, say, directly in the field, more in a technology strategy role,
Okay.
and moved into an account executive role for a global pharmaceutical company for about 5 years. And then I
Excellent.
moved into our industry team, um, that focuses on kind of like overlay sales, that
Yeah.
focuses on the life sciences industry, working with all of the US based
Yeah.
pharmaceutical companies. And before Microsoft, I'd say about half of my career has been touching the life sciences industry in one way or another.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. We have similar backgrounds. So I have a technical background, did technical sales for a while, and then direct sales for a while before doing partner stuff. So I'm anxious to hear your perspective. I think people who come out of a kind of a customer facing selling environment into this role have a really interesting perspective on how it works with partners. So anxious to hear about that. Well, this episode, what we want to do here today is really um, talk a little bit about what was in the main episode. We had this episode on strategic alignment. I know you just listened to that. And so let's start with when you listen to that episode, how do you react to that? What resonated for you in that episode when we talk about trying to drive strategic alignment?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think what resonated for me with that episode most was, I'd say, the word perspective.
Yeah.
Like it came across, uh, you know, and the notion that a strategic partnership at one level for some company at a certain level might be a different level at
Yeah.
another company. Um, and that was, I see that a lot. We have, I work with numerous partners of a portfolio of partners, and sometimes it's appropriate to be literally top to top, where the
Yeah.
CEO of our company is involved, and other times it's really not appropriate,
Yeah.
or I would say maybe isn't of the best interest to both sides to
Yeah.
have that, because there wouldn't be much to follow on from it. So that was really, it really resonated with me, and it's something that um, I believe is we should practice as much as possible.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. That perspective thing is, it's one of my favorite things to talk with people about. I think executives sometimes have a tendency to misuse those words, or maybe abuse them is the right word, where they say things like, well, you're not being strategic, when you're kind of like, well, yeah, but what does that mean to you? Like,
Right,
strategic to me might mean something different. So it's an important concept to get your head wrapped around.
right,
Well,
or even what does a partnership mean to you, right? Like
yeah,
that's another, yeah. So
for
completely
sure,
agree
for
with it.
sure. All those semantics are big, big stumbling blocks in the way we talk, both internally and externally. Well, look, part of what we like to do in these companion episodes is get super pragmatic and try and give the listeners some ideas, some tips, some tricks about the topic. And so, in this area of strategic alignment, I'd love to get, especially someone who's relatively new to the partner environment. I'd love to get your kind of advice of, you know, what's the best way to approach this strategic alignment type of conversation with a partner?
Okay, sounds good. So, well, I have a story, an example that we've been working on. If it makes sense to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be even
Um,
better. Love it.
well, we have, I mean, in our organization, we basically have a little bit of a distinction between a recruit partner, one that we're trying to onboard, and then
Yeah.
once they're recruited, they become a managed partner. Um, but in the industry lens, sometimes those lines are blurred quite a bit. We're trying to
Yeah.
constantly recruit, et cetera. So I was working with a colleague, Davey Kumar, who was more really focused on the early stage recruit with a potential partner. I don't want to name them for privacy reasons,
Sure.
but she did a great job of elevating the conversation to pretty high levels within their company. And then things happened in the market that were unrelated to Microsoft or to the partner
Hmm.
or relationship, but it was a point in time that drove an opportunity to drive a better partnership. A distinct
Ah,
opportunity is very
yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
So we were discussing about how can we capitalize on this? How can we leverage this? And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to advertise your services, but it shifted to, hey, we're talking about strategic alignment with EQ selling right now, and we literally like use the framework to
Nice.
bring it back to the partner, potential partner, I should say, and um, you know, perspective is a part of this, and language. Um, we use the framework to really dive deep into, what is the business objective that you're trying to get out of this, and
Yeah.
we were very transparent and open with them. This is what
Yep.
we're trying to get out of it, right? And it's within a specific vertical and a specific industry. They're clearly a market leader, and it's an area that we could use help.
Sure.
We're a big company, we're very successful, but we're not successful everywhere. So
Sure.
this was an area where mutual benefit was a real potential.
Yeah.
Um, and we used the framework to drive that, to actually get clarity from them.
Yeah.
And I'd say it wasn't overnight. It didn't work out perfectly, but we iterated on it. We went back and forth. We
Hmm.
kind of challenged them on it, and it was leading towards, in this case, kind of a rare case, it was leading to a CEO to CEO discussion.
Yep.
And we actually leveraged the framework and said, hey, look, if our CEOs are going to meet, we need to make sure that your CEO is fully aligned with this framework. So
Yep.
there's like we boiled it down to one slide that kind of showed both sides of a strategic partnership, and what the joint would bring together. And ultimately that happened. It took them, took a little effort, but we
Sure.
had the potential partner make sure that their CEO signed off on it before the meeting.
Yep.
And that joint, it's called vision or
Yep.
framework, was shared with Satya Nadella, our CEO. Before the meeting, he had time to review it as well. So I think it really it helped to crystallize what we're trying to
Right.
accomplish,
Yeah.
and not necessarily just with, let's say, the leads from a partner perspective at both companies, but making sure that the vision was aligned with what the CEO's vision was, given that in this case, it was leading to a CEO to CEO discussion.
Yeah. Look, I'm super curious about some of the kind of pragmatic details of that, right? Like I'm envisioning both people who've been through our training listening to this and people who haven't been through our training listening to this. What did that look like when you say you used the framework?
Mhm,
How much of, I know in the training, we give you kind of a template that says, hey, look, these are the questions you want to try and answer, right? You intimated to one of them, what do you want to get out of this? What do we want to get out of this, right?
mhm.
How transparent were you with the partner in the elements of that framework of those template items? I mean, were you guys pretty, like, did you kind of say, look, these are the questions we want to answer? Was it more organic? Like, how did that work in some of those conversations?
I'd say we were very transparent. So what we did is, if there's a slide that you have within your framework that basically puts everything on one page of,
Yep.
the business objectives for one side, the other, and the joint and everything. And we put that on a share that we shared with them, and we took a
Okay.
stab at filling it out. We took a stab at filling it out from both sides, just
Yep.
to
Sure.
sort of accelerate the process. Say, hey, this is what we're thinking, a
Yep.
joint partnership would look like. But then we went through it in detail. We literally went through like
Yep.
each box and said this, this is why we're thinking this, whatever, and then had them had the potential partner, iterate on it and fill it out
Yep.
and complete things. And then we reviewed it together, where, again, there was times where we're like, are you sure you really, like, we really
Yep.
want that? Like, or we'd say, that's not realistic.
Yep.
Um, I'll tell you one thing that was evident is that they had a perception of being a partner existing,
Hmm.
that they were already a partner. And although they had integrations with Microsoft, they had API type integrations with things like Outlook and
Yep.
things like that. None of those integrations drove any revenue for Microsoft or any market share,
Yeah.
advancement or really any benefit. So we had to level set with them that,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, and we had to be careful, right? Yes, you're a partner, right?
Right.
But
Right.
but at what level? So we actually uh, came up with this concept of that there's there's different partnerships. You could be like a lightweight partner or a strategic partner,
Yep.
and we kind of put them on the list. We laid out different options, and we kind of put them on the far left, call it. And they
Yep.
were like, okay, I get it. Like, and so we were like,
Right.
the only, we really need to drive this to a point where when you sell into the market, there's mutual benefit, and there
Right.
really isn't mutual benefit today. And so
Yeah.
even having the framework led to, I'd say, the ability to have that conversation without upsetting either side.
Right.
Just a this is the way it is. Like, this is the structure.
Yeah.
We want you to fit into the structure. We want to be successful together.
Yeah.
For success on our end, we need X, and for success on your end, you tell us what you need, and that it helped us
Yeah.
to work through that.
Ah, Matt, I wish I could. I want to have you come to every time we teach strategic alignment. I want to have you there because you just described how ideal, like the ideal scenario of applying it. I love hearing what you're saying, and the fact that the partner responded really positively to it. Giving the partner a framework is very often super helpful to them because, to your point, everyone's got a different definition of the word partnership, right?
Right.
And like, now I get why you said that a little bit earlier in our conversation about not only is it the definition of strategic, but hey, it's even the definition of partnership. And we talk all the time about, look, some partnerships are just transactional in
Mhm.
nature, and that's not what we're trying to build, right? That's not, we need those and we have some of those, but we treat those differently. Like, we don't put a lot of resources on those kinds of partners because they're it's not mutually beneficial. um
Right. Right.
oh my gosh, there were so many things in there that I would love to spend more time on, but the fact that I love this pragmatic approach, right? The fact that we gave you a template, you essentially use the template right with the partner. The thing I wanted to key in on is uh, pre-filling out or putting your ideas for the partner instead of giving them a blank form to fill out,
Mhm.
right? So critical, right? Because if all we're doing is giving them a blank form, it feels to them like, hey, this is just a check the box exercise. It doesn't really matter what I put in. If instead you put something in and say, hey, here's what I think I heard from you, like, based on our conversations, this is what makes sense. It generates a whole different kind of conversation. I'm curious, when you gave them that had some stuff filled in, were they offended by that? Like, or was that helpful to have that in there?
It was definitely helpful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this might be part of, I used to be a consultant, and part
Yeah.
of one thing I learned, um, is if you come with a finished product, there's no buy-in on the other
Yeah.
side.
That's right.
If you come with an empty sheet, paper, then yeah, it might show that there's no interest on our side. So
Yeah.
very intentionally put in some rough language and big word draft on the page. Like,
Yeah.
this is a draft. We're just getting started. We just want you to understand some of our thoughts, or how, capture what we've heard
Yep.
from you, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was helpful. They definitely modified it. They definitely iterated on
Of
it
course.
across the
Yeah.
board, which is what you'd expect and want. Um, but at least it gave them a starting point, and I do
Yeah.
think it showed some level of interest on our end.
For
Um,
sure.
I mean, there's one thing I just want to hit upon that it's related to that and other aspects, is that, I mean, in general, they had an ask of Microsoft early on that I'd say was beyond what we were willing to do,
Yep.
and the reason is that it would frankly benefit them a lot more than it would benefit us,
Right.
and we're all for mutual benefit, but when it's completely lopsided, that didn't make sense. So part of putting it down on paper was to crystallize that, oh yes, we'd love to do that,
Yeah.
but only if we can do more to
Yeah.
balance out the relationship.
Yeah. So critical, Matt, having that on paper to help them see the imbalance, right? For them to go, oh yeah, I guess you're right. That's maybe not as mutual as we would like it to be. And so I love that. Hey, Matt, we try and keep these as short as we can, and so I'm going to call this to a little bit of a close. I'm going to ask you one more thing, which is,
Sure.
do you have any advice to someone listening who maybe hears what you're talking about and goes, "Ooh, that's I'm not sure I could do that." Like, do you have any advice to the person who's maybe a little bit new at partnerships, what they should do around strategic alignment?
Well, I mean, I think of the word partnership as, I try to remove myself from my work and just, what does a partner mean to me, like even in life? And I think a lot of it is around transparency,
Yep.
and being open, and there has to be value going in both directions. And again, that could be for anything that's a partnership. So the one piece of advice I'd say is, think of it that way. You're not trying
Yeah.
to sell the partner. You're not trying to, if you do that, you're probably going to leave, it might work to get them on board, but then, 6 months
Yeah.
later, things would be negative. So, I think just think of it very, objectively, and put on paper, maybe, if you're
Yeah.
going to use the framework in that way, put on paper what you would truly want to get out of it, being optimistic, but, not overly, not trying to like sell them on the solution.
Yeah.
Optimistic about what could happen if both sides are truly invested and trying to
Yeah.
make this work.
Yeah. Love that. Well, hey, Matt, thanks so much for taking time to be on the podcast with us. I
Sure.
really appreciate your perspective, your opinion, and your a little bit of your commercial for our stuff. That's okay. I'm all right with that. So I really appreciate it. And, we're going to keep doing this podcast for a long time. So when another topic comes up that you feel like maybe you got something to say, we'd love to have you back on the show again.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate the guidance.
All right. Have a great one.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us on the partnership path in real life today. Remember, the real world tests theories and creates leaders. Don't stop here. Subscribe, learn, and grow with us. Let's make every experience count. Until our next real life story.